According to the U.S. National Centers for Environmental Prediction, the average global temperature on Monday hit the highest level ever recorded, 17 degrees Celsius. That's 62 degrees Fahrenheit. And as if that weren't enough, on Tuesday, that record was shattered again. Now, these are not records that anyone covets. Scientists say they are part of the climate change equation, a warming planet plus more extreme and unusual weather. In the Netherlands, people are cleaning up and assessing the damage right now. On Wednesday, the strongest summer storm ever recorded slammed into the country, and that is where our first report takes us tonight.
With a code red warning in place, people in the Netherlands were ordered to stay home. Storm Polly first pounded the North Sea coast with hurricane-force winds that were off the scale. Gusts up to 146 kilometers per hour brought severe damage as the storm tracked inland, toppling trees and leaving a trail of devastation, and at least one death. There's a car buried under that tree, but a woman who had a tree land on the roof of her car, she died close by. That's my car, yes. Is it damaged? Yes, damaged. Badly, I think. I saw those trees falling down. It felt as if we were in the eye of the storm, right here. In Germany, too, Polly unleashed hurricane-force winds, with meteorologists warning people to stay home with danger to life and limb. A single, sudden, severe summer storm that's upended life from the Netherlands right across northern Germany, with the hotter days of summer still to come.
And for more on this, now we want to bring in Dr. Rachel Cletus. She is the Policy Director at the Climate and Energy Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. She joins us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's good to have you on the program. Let's talk about what we saw today in the Netherlands and here in Germany, the storm that just slammed into the Netherlands. How did a storm as strong as a hurricane form over what are normally chilly waters of the English Channel?
Well, this is really an unprecedented storm in summer. And as you pointed out, the destruction and the winds have been terrific. The various factors are still being worked out, but there's no question that climate change is loading the dice for these kinds of extreme weather events. Polly was associated with a very low pressure stacked up against a high pressure dome. And what we're seeing is these kinds of sticky weather patterns are getting more common with climate change. We're also, as you said, seeing record temperatures around the world, not just on land, but also over the seas and the oceans. We're seeing marine heat waves, land-based heat waves, and this unprecedented summer storm is part of a trend of extreme weather that is in part being caused by climate change.
Yeah, let's pick up on these temperatures. We have seen 2 global temperature records toppled in as many days just this week. I mean, it seems like these events are coming faster than ever. Do these figures, do they confirm that?
Absolutely. And what I would caution is it's not just about the single day records. These are, of course, records being broken all over the world. It's the worrisome trend here that is truly concerning, because we are now in a world that's significantly and dangerously altered because of human-caused heat-trapping emissions, which continue to rise around the world. So the records that are being broken, they're an alarm bell for us to take action now to cut our emissions.
And I'm worried also about the trajectory here moving forward. I mean, it is still early July. If we expect more record high temperatures, can we also expect July, maybe August, to be the hottest July and August on record?
Unfortunately, we're going to continue to see these temperature records being broken, both because of climate change as well as because of the El Nino weather pattern that has started to set in. And we're seeing around the world, from China to Europe to the United States, these deadly heat waves. And they're affecting the most vulnerable people the most, the people who are the poorest, the people who are forced to work outdoors, elderly people, very young people whose bodies cannot acclimatize as easily to the heat are on the front lines of the impacts of these terrible heat waves. But we can take action if we cut our emissions sharply. And that's really important to recognize. These heat waves are directly tied to our heat trapping emissions.
And we know even if we were to stop all greenhouse gas emissions tomorrow, we still have to deal with the effects that are already in motion. And if we're looking at more pieces of the planet with larger populations living in very humid areas, what do these people have to prepare themselves for? What can be done for the people who are going to be living in high humidity areas?
Well, what's really important is that we recognize this ahead of time because the science is clear that these heat waves are getting worse. We have to take action ahead of time, not just in emergency measures, but well ahead of time so people have access to cooling, to air conditioning, to safe places where they can go and that they're not exposed to these kind of extreme deadly heat waves. We have to make sure that that's available for everyone, not just the rich, but those who cannot afford high energy bills, those who have to work outdoors. The time to take action is now, both on cutting our emissions to limit the worst of the heat waves, as well as to prepare for the public health impact of these kinds of deadly heat waves.
I just want, before we run out of time, I want to talk about this temperature, the average global temperature. Tuesday's global high was almost 1.8 degrees Celsius higher than the long-term average. Viewers may be asking, does this mean that we have already reached the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit, which the IPCC says could bring disastrous and irreversible climate change?
Well, what the IPCC is referring to is a permanent increase over 1.5 degrees. We have not yet breached that limit, although we will see temporary increases above that limit within the next 5 years. We know that the El Nino will make the heat worse in the next 5 years. We will temporarily breach that 1.5, but we haven't permanently breached it, and we still have an opportunity to take action in this decisive decade. That said, we're just over 1.1 degrees Celsius increase global average long term, and we're already seeing devastating impact. There is no safe temperature here. We've already breached that. We're already in a world of dangerous conditions.
Global temperature levels are high. Let me ask you, last question, how high is your confidence level that we are going to get this situation under control?
Well, here's what we have to do. We have to stop emitting fossil fuel-based heat trapping emissions, and that means breaking the power of fossil fuel industries that have stood in the way of climate progress. It means holding our politicians' feet to the fire. There is something we can do now. What's been standing in the way is a lack of political will and the obstruction from the fossil fuel industry.
Dr. Rachel Cletus joining us tonight from the Union of Concerned Scientists. We appreciate your time and your insights tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Climate change-induced heat waves in northern India have claimed close to 100 lives so far this year. The recent deaths in the states of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh suggest this could be the new normal there, and it reveals a healthcare system not prepared to take the heat.
Sirens wailing. The ambulance races toward another patient in distress. Suspected heat stroke brought on by the dangerous midday heat.
The work is difficult for sure. We have to visit rural as well as urban areas. Sometimes the roads are not well constructed in rural areas. Moreover, it can be difficult to pick the patient up from their home in difficult terrain. You have to tolerate the heat. The ambulance has air conditioning, but it's no match for the temperature outside. We need to keep it together and keep working despite the heat.
During this brutally hot summer, Sunil and Jitendra say they're sometimes responding to twice the usual number of calls. They barely have time to cool down. Another call has come in, and they've got to get back on the road.
This is our job. When we see the patient's condition, we rush to the hospital to provide quickest relief. We don't feel heat or hunger, we just work.
This time, they've rushed through the heat, 43 degrees Celsius, to pick up a pregnant woman. There are few places to escape the heat here in Bundelkhand, deep within the province of Uttar Pradesh, one of India's hottest regions, making this government-funded free service a lifeline for area residents.
I feel satisfied because my job is all about public service. I'm able to save lives.
And they keep at it, despite the 12-hour days and low pay, around $170 a month, on the front lines of India's heat crisis.
The South American nation of Uruguay was the first country in the world to enshrine the right to clean drinking water in its constitution. Now, that was back in 2004. Well, now the country's capital, Montevideo, is experiencing its worst drought in more than 70 years, and the situation is being made worse by residents who are hoarding water supplies.
Making a cup of traditional mate or tea with tap water was once easy. But drought means people are being forced to turn to bottled supplies. It's a luxury not everyone can afford. In this neighborhood in Uruguay's capital, Montevideo, many have to rely on lower quality municipal sources.
Drinking mate with this water is difficult. It's difficult because of its taste and the discomfort it causes in the stomach. This tap water also gives you a headache. Here you cannot buy bottled water. Some people can buy it, and others cannot. Those of us who are low income cannot.
Uruguay is facing its worst drought in decades. The Paso Severino Reservoir on the Santa Lucia River, the country's largest, used to supply fresh water to over half of Uruguay's 3.4 million inhabitants. Now it is almost dry.
Since the dam was built, I've never seen it like this. The water flow is very low.
Uruguay was the first country in the world to enshrine the right to clean drinking water in its constitution in 2004. Now the government has declared a water emergency, exempting taxes on bottled water. Authorities have also turned water into higher salt levels. In May, the health ministry doubled the maximum allowed levels for chloride and sodium.
The water supply is not going to be cut off. The scenario we may have will be worse water quality.
The government has promised to provide 500,000 people with lower incomes the bottled water they need. But ultimately, everyone will be looking from the cracked riverbeds to the skies in the hope that the rain will finally come.
All right, for more now, let's go to the capital of Uruguay, Montevideo, and I want to speak with journalist Dario Klein. Dario, it's good to have you with us. Let me just ask you what the situation there is where you are. I mean, could you go now to the water faucet and drink from the tap? Is that possible?
I mean, you could, but the taste is really bad, and for people that we have information about what's in that tap water, it's not really recommended to drink it. I mean, if you don't have any other choice, you could still drink it. The government says that water is drinkable, but not potable. It's a strange game of words, but that's how they declare it. It's like the water is clean. You could drink it. You will not die if you drink it, but you're not supposed to drink it for a long time. And even it's not recommended to have long showers right now because there is besides the chloride and the sodium, we also have another thing that is the trialomethane. I think that's how it's called. That you can smell it when in the shower. And it's not recommended to to take that for a long time.
So you're basically, you are relying right now completely on bottled water, correct?
Correct, yeah.
I know we've seen protests against water shortages on the streets of the capital in recent weeks. I mean, what has been the government's response to that? I mean, people have to have safe drinking water.
Yeah, well, the response of the government has been some decisions they took about lowering the taxes for bottled water, sending bottled water to the poorest sections of the society. Of course, the opposition says that was too little, too late, and so it's now they are asking the government to actually not to that people don't have to pay the water service, because actually they say it's not providing the service that people is paying. Right now, yeah. Sure.
Let me just ask you, you're in a country that has enshrined the right to clean drinking water in its constitution. A lot of democracies around the world do not have that in their constitution. If that's the case, you're facing a water shortage. Who is to blame for this situation?
That's one of the million-dollar questions. It's of course the first problem is the lack of rain for the last 3 years, but there's been a lot of systems that have not been built in the last years. In the last 10 years, the former government and this government didn't build another reservoir that was part of the project that should have been built by now. But the former government from the left, they said that they left the project finished and able to start by 2019. And this government decided not to do it, not to build that new reservoir, because they wanted to start another project with a private company. So that's part of the political game. That's part of the blaming. The truth is, former President Jose Mujica, last night, he was in an interview and he said, he said in Spanish, we all slept on this. We didn't do, neither us, neither this government, we didn't do what was supposed to be done.
Yeah, sleeping at the wheel when you're supposed to be in charge. Yeah. Journalist Dario Klein joining us tonight from Uruguay. Dario, we appreciate your time tonight, and we hope the water situation improves for you and everyone else there. Thank you.
Thank you very much.